The first part I don't have video for right now, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but we cover the past week in Israel and around the world as it affects Jews. And for those of you not in Israel, you should know today was a Yom Atzirah, a national strike called by the left to officially a national strike to protest against the government for not bringing home the hostages and for focusing too much on expanding the war by going into Gaza City, calling up people again, beginning a new surge into Gaza City, instead of focusing on a full withdrawal, stop the war now, you accomplished what you did, bring home all the hostages. Israel is 50-50, like America, 50-50 left wing, 50-50 right wing. There's no center anymore, very little center, just like America. In America, either there's Mamdani for New York, or there's, and the Democrats have moved way left, and the Republicans have moved to the right. Just the way it is. And in the same way in Israel, there's pretty little center. You could argue as to whether or not Bennett is the center, maybe a little bit center right, a little bit center left, Benny Gantz or Gantz, a little bit center left, not really center right. There's a guy out there named Yoaz Hendel who may show up. He might be center, a little bit center left, a little center right. And then you have the left. You have Yair Lapid, his party Yesh Atid, and what used to be the Labor Party and the Meretz Party. The two of them together could not get past the minimum. One could get through with the other, so they merged, and without any creativity, since they're extreme leftist woke, they decided to call themselves the Democrats, which is what the Democrats of America are. So that's the parties. And it tallies right now, there's a little bit more than 60 of the 120 seats on the right. And so much complexity. For those of you that don't follow it every day about why right-wing religious parties would bring down the government, even though if the government gets brought down and the left comes in, it'll be 10 times worse for them, 1,000 times worse for them. Lots of complexities, but basically the country is 50-50. If one particular idiot, thank God, Merav Michaeli, had not refused to run her Labor Party in a combined package with Meretz in the last election, they would have gotten another 2 or 3 seats. Again, if you don't follow this stuff all the time, too much time to explain. But there would have been 2 or 3 more seats for the left. There would not have been a 61-seat majority on the right. But she did not want to run with Meretz, which they always run with Meretz. So Meretz had a few seats short, wasted enough votes for 3 seats they lost, and everything came out. So there's a national strike. When there's a national strike in Israel, the way the New York Times and the Washington Post and the rest of the world, Le Monde and BBC, the way it will be reported is that the country hates Netanyahu and the country wants to take him down, and the currently good government does not represent the country. Fact is, the country's 50-50. It was when the election took place 3 years ago. It will be for the foreseeable future. And because the left cannot win an election outright anymore, they never lost an election for the first 30 years of Israel from 1948 to 1977. When Begin won in 77, the left did not fully grasp what happened. They just took it as a reaction to the Yom Kippur War, a lot of anger. The Yom Kippur War was 73, and they felt people just, but what happened in 77 with the election of Begin is that the country moved as a country to the right. It is now a country even though nobody is a centrist, everybody is a leftist or a rightist, the country actually is in the center. It's 50-50, and they can't pull it either way. But the center right. In other words, if the opposition wins an election sometime in the next year, next elections are, I believe, a year from now in September. And if there are new elections, and if the opposition wins, that opposition will include parties like Naftali Bennett and Avigdor Lieberman, who will never be able to sit long-term with the Democrats. And that kind of a coalition will break up. The only thing that holds them together is they all hate Netanyahu. It's sort of how the Iranians came to power with the mullahs. It was a lot of different people who hated the Shah. Communists on the left, godless communists side by side with the mullahs. And then after the election, turned out that the communists and everybody on the left who helped bring down the Shah all got hanged. That was the end of them. And what's left are the mullahs and the Shah people. And in the same way, when sometime in the next year there's a new election, they're scheduled for September. They might be called earlier, depending on what the anti-draft Orthodox right wing decides. But a new election in France, in England, in Canada, the American Democrats, everybody thinks if you take down Netanyahu and you elect the opposition, there will be a two-state solution and there will be a Palestinian state. There will never be a Palestinian state because in the opposition, you would have Avigdor Lieberman, who lives in the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, and you have Bennett, and you have others who, although none of them could be trusted, they will not have this two-state. They will never give the Arabs. Now, maybe Bennett is enough of a turncoat that he would have changed his line, maybe. But after October 7, no one's giving it up. No one, never again. Everybody talks about how Hamas was so smart, and in the end, look what they accomplished. And October 7, now they have all the American campuses on their side, and they have England and Canada and France calling for a two-state solution, and look how much they accomplished. What they did not accomplish is that in Israel, the people who live near Judea, Samaria, near the Palestinian Authority, and there is no Palestine. We'll call them Martians, because there are Martians, maybe. Palestinians definitely don't exist. So what ends up happening is that you have a Martian authority there, and Lieberman lives there, and you have left-wingers who live just outside the Martian authority in places like Ra'anana and Tel Aviv and Haifa and Petach Tikva, Herzliya, not to mention Yerushalayim, Mamish on the border. And they all live as close to that authority as the people who got massacred on October 7 live to Gaza. So you even have leftists who want to tear down Netanyahu and the Lieberman people and the Bennett people and the Gantz people. But they're not going to give a Palestinian state. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. It might have happened once, never going to happen. Not to mention go ahead and remove 1 million Jews from their homes. They think because they could move 8,500 from Gush Katif in 2005, they can move 100 times that amount, 850,000, 350,000 in the eastern part of Yerushalayim and her suburbs like Gilo and Beitar, and another 500,000 from Judea, Samaria, like the 30,000 that live in Ariel, or the 20,000 that live in Carney. Never going to happen. So anyway, there's a strike, and the official reason is to free the hostages. And the real reason for the strike is to take down the Netanyahu government. If you don't watch the news week after week, day after day, you may not know every single Saturday night, the left has a massive demonstration of 100,000 people or 70,000 people against the Netanyahu government. When Netanyahu's government was pushing for judicial reform, The left-wing media said the people are against judicial reform. Now the left-wing media says something else. They want the hostages free. And because the left-wing media is in cahoots. They actually report on TV, if you would like to take part in Saturday night's demonstration to tear down the government, for the hostages, here are the locations and times that people will be gathering. They actually, for free, Channel 12, Channel 13, Channel 11, for free, announce the location and time of the anti-government rally near you. And they did it for the judicial reform and everything else. So I did want to, how could I not, take note at the outset about the national strike, but at the same time, I did want you all to know what's going on. And I want to go back primarily to my program, okay? They got to have their strike. This is my program. Notably, by the way, the Histadrut, the National Labor Union, which did participate in the last national strike till the court stopped them, because under Israeli law, you're not allowed to have a nationwide Histadrut strike for political reasons. The Histadrut under the law in Israel, by actual legislated law, and there's something like the AFL-CIO, only communist-oriented, and by law, they are allowed to have a nationwide shutdown for economic reasons. They want more money, they want better hours, but they're not allowed to do it for political reasons. So to do it for the hostages, or to do it for against judicial reform, or whatever it might be, or to draft the Haredim, they're not allowed to close it down. So each individual union has to, individual people have to. And so that's the news for the day. There's a national strike. It's going to accomplish nothing for either side. And there are even parents of some of the most dramatically imprisoned hostages still there. There are as many as 20 living hostages today. Some of them may be gone for what we know, but no more than 20, but there are maybe 20 precious Jewish lives. And there were statements from several of the parents that are in the media. They can't hold back those quotes from the parents of the hostages who said, don't go on strike, you're strengthening Hamas. Because if I were Hamas, and I'm under pressure from Netanyahu and from others, Trump, Witkoff, to make a deal, and then I see that half the Israeli country is cracking and demanding, let's give up, b'chol machir, at any price, let's give up, let's pull out of Gaza, we did enough. It encourages me as Hamas. I've got them. They're cracking. I just about have them. And therefore, it's very, very important to understand how those parents, they understand. We thought maybe we can get our son back if we take over Gaza City. Who the hell knows? But all we need is for Hamas to see that they're cracking in Israel. So you know what Hamas will do? They'll kill one of them. And they'll send out a video of that and get more people to crack. But it's pretty well baked in now. Half of the country's cracking, including the beautiful people. There's a actress named Maya, I think, Wertheimer or Wertheimer. She's in Shabbat Nakim. She was the Orthodox woman with what's his name, Gidon or something in Shabbat Nakim, and you have Rotem Sella. She's the blonde who's the big actress in The Baker and the Beauty. You might have seen that in America too. And now this time they got Gal Gadot, Superwoman, and they all issued statements. It's like America. It's the beautiful people. Take those some people, put them in Manhattan, and the beautiful people here are demonstrating against them because they don't accept them anyway. There's no room for Jewish leftists right now. Jewish leftists need not apply. No one's got room for them. Okay. So that's important part to start the program. Now here's where we're going to part 2. And then there's part 3. Part two is going to be a 30 to 40 minute segue. It's about time I did it, and I want to do it. And you'll find it more interesting than you expected. What has emerged in America is that social media, well, it has a lot of important value. You're all on social media. We're doing this on the internet. And social media is great value, but social media brings out nuts. You get to be in your mother's basement without underwear on, and you sit and you type under the name, Fierce Warrior. That's your moniker. And so you get all these nuts. And the way you actually make money on social media is by clicks and followers. The more who click and follow, the more YouTube and others pay. So since there's a motivation to maximize your clicks, there's almost no censorship at all. Very rare. Only if someone's calling for death or something like that. And that kind of death, that brings in the FBI and the government. But otherwise there's no. So what happens is, to maximize clicks and followers, the more outrageous, the more insane, the more clicks, the more money you make. So it brings out a lot of nuts. As a result, it's its own world. I want to introduce you today. You've heard of him and her a billion times. And I want you to we're going to take out about half an hour to 40 minutes on Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, because they are probably the two most widely followed, also Joe Rogan, but he's the two most widely followed anti-Semites. And they have brought anti-Semitism into people's homes in a way that did not happen before. Candace Owens started off, she was initially sponsored by a Jew, David Horowitz of Front Page Magazine, discovered her. He's a right-winger. And then Dennis Prager brought her into Prager University and made her somebody. And then Ben Shapiro made her a 1 million follower person by bringing her into Daily Wire. When Kanye West emerged as an anti-Semite, no one knew it at first. But when Kanye West went and posted that insane thing about DEFCON 3 and all that stupid stuff, he meant DEFCON 3 with a TH, but he's too stupid. He's smart in business, and he apparently makes some kind of a music. I've never heard anything by him. One of the few advantages of a lung transplant and becoming hard of hearing, not hearing Kanye West sing. So anyway, as Kanye West openly became anti-Semitic, nobody knew it at the time, but he posed an existential problem for Candace Owens, because she had no other black right-wing conservative Republican of the cool generation. There are several black right-wing Republican conservatives like Thomas Sowell or Sowell and Jason Riley of the Wall Street Journal, and Tim, the senator from South Carolina, and some others, some very prominent black people who are conservative Republicans, but they're older. They're certainly not majority, and they're older. And so among young people, cool people, which Candace is, there was Kanye West. And she came under pressure from Ben Shapiro, as I understand it, and Dennis Prager and David Horowitz. Come on, Candace, you're black, you're prominent, you're beautiful, you're conservative, you're people follow you. Use your platform to tell people Kanye West is wrong. You can't be, anti-Semitism is wrong. And she couldn't bring herself to attack her bosom buddy, Kanye West, that they're in the same politics, the only two prominent black Republican conservatives. Kanye West has moved on to just pure insanity And he's not liberal. He's out of his mind. And she would not attack him and came under pressure from Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager, and she decided it was just an evolution. You're not my master, and I don't work on your Jewish plantation. Because by coincidence, all the people around her asking her to attack Kanye West were Jews. How come? Because by coincidence, only Jews gave her a chance. It's the way it's always been. Jews bring a black person in. No other Italians won't rent to them back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Italians won't rent to them. Poles won't rent to them. Irish won't rent to them. Jews rent to them. Poles won't give them credit in the days before credit cards, store credit. Italians won't give them credit. Irish won't give them credit. Jews give them credit. And then everything's nice. Then it's time to pay back your credit, your store credit. So who do you owe money to? And it's time to pay rent. So who's your landlord? And that was the end of the Jewish black experience. And that's what happened here. Jews were the only ones that gave her a chance. So they're the ones she turned down. I want you to spend some time. We're going to spend some time with Candace. And the other one, the real toxic poison, even more so, is Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson was a solid Republican conservative social. And I loved where he stood when he was on Fox. He was against abortion. He was against teaching transgender in the public schools or even gay, LGBTQ. He spent a lot of time on family values. He didn't want his kids exposed to the garbage. I enjoyed that. And politically conservative. And then he and Fox had a falling out, and he ended up on social media. And once he ended up on social media, he had no reins, R-E-I-N, no reins attached to him. And he started going wild. And he has become a very big anti-Semite. But he has a shtick. He does it very well. He doesn't say it himself. He brings guests who are anti-Semitic on his show. Not only, he has other kinds of people too. It's not only one way. It's not only a one horse, a one pony. But he brings anti-Semites on the show. Holocaust deniers, Israel haters, Candace Owens, some pseudo nun in Gaza or in the West, in Judea, Samaria. And he gives them a platform for like an hour to talk to his 1 million followers and listeners, spewing anti-Jewish hate. And he listens, and takes the position that I never knew this. Thank you for coming on my show and educating me to truth that I never knew about. Really? They do that? And so that's his shtick. Put a Holocaust denier on the show. Let the Holocaust denier deny the Holocaust. And he doesn't, I never denied the Holocaust. I was just listening and learning. Interesting. And he has this very annoying laugh that sort of brings back memories of the dearly departed Kamala Harris. Sort of a cackle that's very annoying if you like him, and that's really annoying if you don't like him. And as a Jew, I don't like him. So we're going to spend about half an hour, but I wanted very much for you to know who we're dealing with. And because you hear about them all the time, and it's quite an eye-opener and ear-opener to actually see and listen to these two. And then we're going to get back to other stuff from the past week. And we'll run over an hour and a half, but I've tried very hard to keep it to an hour 45. The problem is I needed a half an hour intro, and so may run closer to an hour 55, or an hour 59. I don't want to say 2 hours. You can always get out in any time you want. Here we go. Thank you. But it was really necessary to present this this intro. Here we go. Thank you for being here.
How can somebody pledge allegiance to two countries at the same time? And is that something that we should be allowing?
I mean, I think your question says it all. Obviously, that's absurd. I quote the New Testament, but I also refer to common sense when I say that no man can serve two masters. It's not possible. There's also a sense, and this is relevant to me, and I know you're speaking about Israel, but anybody, by the way, who serves in a foreign military should lose his citizenship immediately. There are a lot of Americans who've served in the IDF. They should lose their citizenship. You can't fight for another country and remain an American, period. My ancestors, and I'm sure yours, would be totally shocked by some of the conversations. Foreign flags in the Congress? Are you joking? Just an American who loves my country.
Did you notice it began with other countries and then a couple of Jewish star flags?
And I think it's fair to demand that the people running my country love it every bit as much as I do.
How have we gotten to the point where you have sincere Christians, good people like that, are making the case that Jesus wants more bombing? What is that?
Well, also look at Jesus himself, he was persecuted in his.
This is the right-wing anti-Semite in Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I was a big supporter of hers the first year she was in, not financial, of course, but I backed her. I defended her. Nancy Pelosi threw her off committees and did not let her talk and speak in the House of Representatives. She was duly elected, and I was on her side. She has emerged as a vicious anti-Semite, and some people refer to it as the horseshoe theory of politics, where if you start on the left, the far left, like the Squad, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Ocasio, and if you move along from one side of the horseshoe, you end up on the other side of the horseshoe, on the extreme right. They both end up being anti-Semitic. She is viciously the only non-Democrat in Congress who has revealed as anti-Semitic. She has voted twice against resolutions that simply condemned anti-Semitism. Simply condemned anti-Semitism. After like a shooting of Jews, like in Washington, D.C., that couple, they weren't even Jews, or in Colorado, she won't vote to condemn anti-Semitism. She has taken stands that are, she's a Christian anti-Semite, very different from most Christians who have been very pro-Israel. Sort of like the old-fashioned Christian anti-Semites, you people killed our Lord and Savior. She's from that.
Lifetime by the leaders of Israel, the leaders at the temple. He was persecuted by his own people's leaders, and all of the prophets throughout the Old Testament. Who were they persecuted and killed by? The leaders of their day. It's throughout the entire Bible. So it's not uncommon that this would be happening. The secular government should not be telling Christians in America what they should and shouldn't do with their tax dollars, with their military, and with who their allegiance should go to.
Do you agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker? Comment below.
Right now, I'm obviously very much interested in the Epstein case. And so that.
Now, this is Candace Owens being interviewed on Tucker Carlson. And we're just going to watch a few minutes of this. I want you to get the sense of the Tucker Carlson shtick, and this is the Tucker Carlson show, and to get a sense of the Candace shtick. They're both also extremely big on conspiracy theory. They are drawn to every conspiracy known to mankind, humanity, and it brings out 1 million followers in a population of 300 million. To have 1/3% who are into conspiracies and believe them all. Here you go.
That's where I'm focusing my attention, the Epstein case.
What do you think that was?
And you see what I was saying? Tucker Carlson's asking questions. He's not saying it. He's just getting educated. Who do you think that was? And she, on the other hand, is going, of course she's going for Epstein, Weinstein, you know.
The Epstein case.
I would say Israel, obviously.
Obviously, you know who Jeffrey Epstein is. And there actually is an Israel connection. Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, made a lot of visits to Epstein. But I would say Israel, obviously.
And again, I'm so tired of us being gaslit. It's the dumbest gaslighting of all time. On record, okay, when Pam Bondi said, I can't even, this was just a moment where I was.
And there's your annoying laugh. For those not in America, Pam Bondi's the Attorney General, claims that she doesn't have all the info on Epstein. And so Candace's point is, I have the info on Epstein because I'm an investigative journalist and I've cut through all the garbage. And if you want to know about Epstein, you have to look at Israel.
It's like, okay, like, F you. You guys hate us. Like, you just, like, you don't even, you have so much power. Why don't you just come out and say, nah, boo-boo, you can't touch us, F you. I would rather you do that, right?
Yes.
Than put on this pretense of a conference, and then you've got Trump over here being like, does anybody still care about Jeffrey Epstein? And then Pam Bondi is asked the question, you know, was he working for another country? And she says, we don't know, right? You don't know? So in my series, I'm like, maybe we can help them. Maybe we can help the deep state figure out who Jeffrey Epstein was working for. Here is Ari Ben Menashe, who was a Mossad agent, who is on record, literally recorded. Let's listen to him tell us about how Jeffrey Epstein was working for the Mossad. Okay, Ari Ben Menashe worked for Mossad, and he's saying that Robert Maxwell brought him to Jeffrey Epstein and said, let this guy in. He's going to be involved in weapons. Hey, Pam Bondi, you might have missed this one. Okay, you might have missed this one. Then you go to another person who is on record, who is Victor Ostrovsky, who defected from the Mossad notoriously. The Mossad admits he worked for the Mossad. He wrote a book, By Deception or By Deception Only. He says that's the Mossad.
She knows more about the Mossad than the Mossad knows.
Motto, which they obviously do that. That's why they execute all these false flags. And he told everybody the truth. He has said Jeffrey Epstein was working with us. So for whatever reason, Candace Owens is able to determine whether or not Jeffrey Epstein might have been working for another state. But Pam Bondi, they're just going to have to keep surmising about whether or not Jeffrey Epstein, who is with Ghislaine Maxwell, her father being Robert Maxwell. One of the biggest lies, by the way, that's told, and I debunked this in our first or our third Epstein episode, is the idea that, oh, well, yeah, Robert Maxwell, they admit he was a Mossad agent, but Epstein didn't know him. The story they try to tell now and fashion to the public is like Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein met after her dad was dead. That's just false. Again, Ari Ben Menashe tells a story of being brought into the office and being told that Epstein was going to be brought in. This was the Iran-Contra scandal. So since the 80s, Jeffrey Epstein has been working for Israel. I don't know how I know that, and Trump and Pam Bondi don't, but they got to bring me in. Like, I might have some evidence here, right? It's like, so we're getting to a point now.
You're going to have tough confirmation hearings.
I just want them to say F you. Like, seriously, that would feel better at this point if they just came out and said, F you, na boo boo, you can't touch us, we rule over you, haha. That would feel at least authentic. Going back to the Taylor Lorenz thing, I'd be like, I really don't like that, but
that laugh is so annoying.
At least it's authentic, and I know you mean it, and it's true.
All totally fair.
Yeah.
Does any of, to the extent that we can project forward and guess, does any of this come out? To a greater extent than it has? Is there ever like a public resolution of this story? No, because Israel's controlling our government. So no, the answer is no. Trump is powerless against him. I don't think we've been a sovereign nation since they shot JFK. And when I say they, it's like people online say, what do you mean by they? I'm talking about Israel. I don't want you guys to read in between. I'm talking.
You got that? Israel shot JFK. Epstein is in the Mossad, and he is asking questions, being educated with his audience and laughing. Talking
about Israel. So let's stop making that a taboo subject, because they've gone mask down. Everything they're doing is demonic. I want nothing to do with it. I will never support Israel into the future after what they've done to these children. The starvation campaign. I don't care. Please write your article. You've already written them all. I don't know what you could add about me. But I do not support Israel. And I don't think that Jewish Americans should support Israel. And I hope that they're now having those conversations. I see many of them recognizing that they have been propagandized into believing they have to support this demonic state. And that's in large part thanks to their birthright trip. Yeah, that mask down moment for Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL when he got caught on the hot mic. It was released. He didn't know that he was being recorded. And he's like, saying that they've got to get TikTok under control. He's like, we have a generational issue with TikTok. We need to do something about this, like what we did with Birthright. What does that tell you? that the entire purpose of that birthright trip, telling every Jewish American, you forget a free trip to Israel, was to propagandize you into believing that you have some affinity with this made up country in the Middle East, like in 1948, that you have to, react when something's happening to them, or you have to look away when they're doing things that are so obviously wrong and demonic. And so I'm hoping now that we're getting to that point where people can recognize that whether you're Black, you don't have to agree with BLM, whether you're Jew, allowing your identity to shape your morality is problematic, okay? And Israel, in and of itself, is a demonic nation. I will never support Israel, right? So I went from working for PragerU to I will never support Israel. So that's how much the scales have fallen from my eyes about what they are involved in. And if this isn't your wake-up call to just look at the footage of what they are doing, they're playing Hunger Games and like throwing food at them and then killing people and seeing who survives. It's just at your fingertips. You have to take a look at what Israel is doing.
So we want to brag, but this has got to be the most pro-dog podcast. Produce a video. We hope you'll do that also. So you first moved to the Holy Land in 1996?
Correct. Yep.
As a nun. How are Christians doing in the Holy Land?
We are told that he's interviewing a nun, N-U-N, that this person is a nun, and he's putting before this person, putting this person on his platform, and he asks questions, as I said. He's being educated. Oh, he didn't come in with any predisposition against Israel. He's just got a guest who's now educating him. This nun.
Holy Land.
Well, it's become a very difficult time for them there. Basically, the Christians are in the same situation as the Muslims being a Palestinian. So there's two different things. If you live in Israel, you're a citizen. And so they can live there and work, but there's sort of some petty grievances that people might have. But if you're a Christian in Palestine, which is where most of the activities of the life of Christ are, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives, Jericho, Jacob's Well, that's all within Palestine. That's the predominance of the Christian population there, and they're treated with the effects of the occupation.
So how are Christians doing in the Holy Land? Like, what's the situation?
You know what a lot of people...
First of all, what that so-called nun was saying, if you think about it, is that Christians in Bethlehem and all the places that person cited, if you think about it, have been under Arab Muslim control. And indeed, Christians are disappearing. In the section of formal Israel, state of Israel, the truth is, it's obvious, Christians are flourishing. Huckabee, the ambassador, loves Israel, and he's a deep Christian. Christians are flourishing. And that person was citing a series of places under Arab dominance where Christians are disappearing. And Carlson's not smart enough to realize what his guest was saying, that the comments, the facts, actually support Israel and show why there cannot be, must not ever be, an Arab Muslim sovereign there. This is a satire on it that I wanted to show you. This guy has a little mustache also, just like the nun.
Don't understand is they think Hamas is some terrorist organization. They're just a resistance movement. When they drag their own people through the streets and put their dead bodies on their family's doorstep because they're collaborators with Israel, I mean, they're resisting.
I mean, last time I checked, treason is a crime. I mean, it's a crime in this country, and you get the death penalty. So I just don't understand the difference, really. I don't.
And look at what happened with the Nova Music Festival. I mean, the music was incredibly loud. It was EDM. And this is loud music. It's very disruptive.
Yes, very loud, like really loud. I mean, and it could damage your ears, like severely damage your ears.
Exactly. And so, to my understanding, they made several requests to lower the music. They sent people over saying, please keep it down, and the Israelis refused.
So wait, you're saying Hamas kindly requested that they turn down the music and they just refused? Why?
So they had no other choice but to slaughter all of the attendees. And it's been very challenging for decades. I remember in 2002, there was a 17-year-old boy who was arrested because he allegedly threw a Molotov cocktail at an Israeli soldier, but this was a Molotov cocktail. He was making a mixed drink, perhaps, to try to offer it to a soldier. Sometimes, you go to bars and they light the alcohol on fire because it's fun to take a shot.
I mean, I enjoy alcohol. I really do. I shouldn't drink as much as I do, but I drink a lot, like a lot. I would certainly accept that offering. Why wouldn't the soldier accept a drink if it was being offered to him peacefully?
It's possible the Israeli soldier misunderstood that, but they accused him of throwing it and it lit the soldier on fire. It's nothing you can't just put out with your hand, but they arrested him, and these are the kind of things that are happening.
Yeah, it sounds excessive.
I remember I was leading a group of American Christians, and I took them to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And
wait, I thought you said that Christians weren't allowed to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Shh, Tucker. We're trying to perpetuate a narrative here.
Of course. I'm sorry. I was actually genuinely curious there for a second. Like genuinely curious. I'm sorry. Old habits die hard.
Play along, okay?
You were saying, I'm sorry. Continue.
In Israeli society, the Christians are completely oppressed.
I mean, you're a Christian. Clearly you're a Christian. Why don't they let you be a Christian? I don't understand.
There's no freedom of religion. There's no freedom in our society to live as we'd like to live and worship as we'd like to worship.
And have you been able to convert anybody in the West Bank to Christianity?
Pass.
What's that?
Hard pass. Next question.
I love that. So I guess my last question to you, and I think where a lot of Americans and people in the West would be confused, is that, we've seen a massive decline in Christians across the Middle East, in Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. Even in the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority, we've just seen decimated communities, completely gone. And Christians just persecuted and slaughtered en masse across the world. And so I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that? I totally agree. So what do we do going forward? What's the next step?
They've been trying to keep this story quiet, and, I guess everybody has their secrets.
Oh, I mean, we all have secrets, of course. I mean, I was molested by a demon.
Yes, and I'm a man.
I mean, it's not such a secret.
Hey.
It's great to have you. Is your name Brigitte?
Space has always been exceedingly fake and gay.
Roll camera.
It's fake and gay when the men did it, and it's now fake and gay because the women did it. So homies were on the moon making phone calls before the time of cell phones, hey, what's up, Prez? Me on the moon with the flag, no issues. First time we've ever flown this thing. Yeah, I don't know. We just got through the belt pretty easily. You must come to terms with
One of her conspiracies that she talks about is the conspiracy to convince people around the world that Americans went on the moon. There is no space program. No one ever went on the moon.
the fact that NASA and space missions have always been this fake and gay. You just weren't alive for the original ones, and you need to learn the history of NASA, of the Apollo programs, which were occult and satanic. It was literally meant to be an antichrist movement to make people believe in man.
Right away, Houston. Pitch over.
It's a fact. I'm going to show you guys. It's like, you can look this up anywhere. Look up Jack Parsons and the Apollo program. They just wanted people to believe in scientific advancement. I'm telling you, space has always been exceedingly fake and gay.
You called the moon landing the Easter Bunny for adults.
Once you get 200 miles out, you hit the Van Allen belt, which has an incredible amount of radiation. There's been no human that's gone beyond that belt since the moon landings, allegedly. So I want you to just Google the temperature of the Van Allen belt. And then I want you to Google what material the shuttle was made out of. This literally doesn't make sense that an aluminum alloy could have gone through the Van Allen belt for an hour and a half or 59 minutes. It just couldn't have happened. It literally can't happen. There's no explanation for it. They just don't even talk about it. They don't like talking about the Van Allen belt because that part makes entirely no sense. And then the camera, they decided to give them to a guy who makes movies.
Life's tough. Get a helmet, man. I'm too pregnant for this. Mentioning Elie Wiesel, the people that had the craziest Holocaust stories. And I'm telling you, I took a class at URI. You could fact check this. I know journalists will. and I want to say it was my freshman year. It may have been my sophomore year. It was honors English course, and we were made to read Night by Elie Wiesel. My professor was a Jewish woman, and we read it, and it was horrific. I remember literally vividly being impacted by this story by Elie Wiesel, where he said that they took babies, like infants, and they smashed their backs against the walls. Like the Nazis did this at Auschwitz, and they, burned them in a pit. And then it came out that that couldn't have happened and that was made up. This kind of began the whole Elie Wiesel scandal. They had won these like Nobel Peace Prize, and there were calls for it to be revoked. This was back in 2008, 2009. And at the end of reading the book, she then told us that, but he made up these stories. And then we had to sort of, as a class, assess why someone would do that. And it was a really interesting class. And obviously she wasn't saying that the Holocaust didn't happen. To be clear, she was saying that some people were lying about what happened, and that some people, what would motivate somebody to do that. And when we think about the disappearance of the totally sadistic, psychopathic Bolsheviks, who, then went on and murdered like 60 million Christians and were never held account to it, it would be, I would say, a good idea to launder your names when you know that a bunch of people are leaving camps, to launder your names through those camps when there's so much chaos in the world and nobody knows who you are or where you came from. So that's just something that I'm just putting in your mind there, because I never forget that class and being like, wow, why would anybody ever lie about something like that? It was totally, totally horrific. And
so you could see how far her obsession with Jews are anti-Semitic. First of all, she supposedly took a class, let's say she did, how you could take a class for a whole term and emerge calling him Elie Wiesel instead of Elie Wiesel. How even people who, most of us never took an Elie Wiesel class, and I don't know anybody who doesn't like Elie Wiesel, but no matter how not to know after 3 or 4 months that the name is pronounced Elie Wiesel, not Elie Wiesel. And if it's true that she had a professor who said it's all lies, well, that's almost believable. It's hard to believe, except for what we know about American campuses and the kind of people and the sickness of this generation being taught by. But there's that obsession on Jews. So it's one time we're going to learn just a little bit more about Candace Owens, as we have about Tucker.
More later.
There wasn't a fight per se, but the establishment, I would not say, was my friends.
Right. And who?
Now, what we have here is that she's got her obsession with Harvey Weinstein. And this fellow will explain it. It's going to be two minutes.
Great weather today, but I had to get out to record this video of Candace Owens interviewing the infamous Harvey Weinstein, and she is trying to get him to say that Israel is the problem, that Jews are the problem, that maybe it's the Jews that put him away. And just watch how she pushes him to try to reveal the identity of these interesting individuals. Who are these people that put you away, that framed you, even though he probably wasn't framed? And then he responds, and she's like gobsmacked for some reason. Check it out.
But have you considered that it could be deeper, that there was somebody who wanted you put away, that there may have been someone who wanted your company? Because to me, there is just...
As you're beginning to see the focus, her head is wrapped around conspiracies. All these conspiracies that no one but she knows about. And she's there to expose to her 1 million idiot viewers and followers the latest conspiracy.
Overwhelming evidence that you were set up here. It looks to me like a modern day hit. I don't know who you upset. I don't know what they were after, but it just looks to me like a rigged system and they took you out. To me, it looks like it was just a show trial and the outcome was already determined before you even stepped into that courtroom. I do think that you stepped on somebody's toes. Like there's somebody's toes that you stepped on that you may not have been aware of when you were in Hollywood, because you had a lot of power. You had a lot of power.
You know, I can't say who.
Why not? Why can't you say who? What do you have to lose?
Because I'm not sure that I'm right.
You say, I think. Maybe. I really want to push you on this point, Harvey, because I think it's very significant. I mean, you had the greatest movies that were in Hollywood. You had a lot of power. And I'm wondering if there was anybody in Hollywood that you may have been fighting with at that time. Like
who runs Hollywood, right?
just anything that could have been going on, because I think there's something bigger happening here.
There wasn't a fight per se, but the establishment, I would not say, was my friends.
Right. And what is the establishment in Hollywood?
It's normally the big studios, but I can't say that they were part of this.
This poor schnook got himself in so much trouble, and he doesn't realize what she's trying to get out of him. She just wants him to say that Hollywood is run by the Jews, and then she can take it from there and say the Jews had a reason to get rid of one of their own, a Jew. But he just doesn't realize where she's going.
Right. No, I'm just wondering, like, who in the end, who owns all those movies now? Who owns your catalog? What happened to your company?
We sold the catalog to a company called Be-In, you know what I mean, which is owned by the Qatari government. Oh. And we sold the other part of the library to a company called Spyglass and Lantern, which is owned by the Saudi Arabian government.
Very interesting. I'm asking these questions because my investigation into this isn't going to stop.
I found that hilarious because she's trying to get Harvey Weinstein to say, it's the Jews. It's the Jews. Trust me, it's the Jews. And he's like, actually, it's the Qataris. She's like, no, it's the Jews. And so she pushes him and pushes him and pushes him, and he finally reveals it. And then her face is like, oh, you're not going to say it's the Jews? Oh, okay, I can't advocate for you anymore. Now, see you in the next one.
What is it about JFK's assassination that triggers Zionists? Why do they pretend that it's an act of anti-Semitism to explore the environment and the things that JFK was adamantly opposed to? I'm going to describe that to you, and I'm going to use only Jewish sources here, so we can remove ourselves from any claims of anti-Semitism. These are just the facts of what JFK was fighting while he was in office, okay? One of the things that he was opposed to was the American Zionist Council. He wanted them, which would go on to become AIPAC. We're still having a discussion about AIPAC's undue influence in our elections today. They were back then known as the American Zionist Council, and JFK's Department of Justice told them that they had to register as a foreign agent under FARA, okay? And so it would color your imagination, obviously. If I'm saying all these things and you find out that I'm registered under FARA for a foreign country like Ukraine, you would go, okay, well, that makes sense. Candace is telling me that we should go to war with Ukraine, but I now know that Candace is actually accepting tens of millions of dollars from Ukraine. That's the purpose of FARA registration. If all you have to do once you become registered under FARA is to reveal your expenditures, reveal how you are being funded, allow people to understand where you are getting this money from, why would they be this opposed to it? I don't know the answer to this. I'm never going to know the answer to this, because what we do know is that a couple of weeks later, JFK got shot, okay? And what was running parallel to this, of course, was that he was on the phone arguing, screaming, having fights with Prime Minister Ben-Gurion of Israel, because he also did not want Israel as a state to become nuclearly armed, okay? And they're fighting on the phone. They still won't declassify these arguments that he was having, but they absolutely were at each other's throats and they hated each other. And he was very opposed to the Dimona reactor. This is something that you can even find in speeches like the Gaddafi speech.
خارج عن الملفات لازم نعرفها. أنا اللي نعرفها والعالم ممكن يعرفها واللي درسها في التاريخ أن كندي قرر تفتيش مفاعل ديمونة الإسرائيلي. هل في قنابل ذرية وإلا لا؟ وعلشان كده تم تخلص منهم.
When you add those two things together, you go, okay, well, would it be a conspiracy to suggest that Ben-Gurion and the state of Israel hated him and he was opposed to them, and he was opposed to them getting funding, and he was opposed to them having undue influence in American politics, and then he dies? And then you weigh that against the fact that the problem for them instantly disappeared as soon as JFK died. Because what happened was that when Lyndon B. Johnson got into office, he was the vice president, all of their problems were instantly resolved because he reversed course on everything. It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews.
Candace Owens would have you believe that the Rebbe, one of the most respectful individuals in the world, hated all non-Jews? Well, check out this clip that disproves that exact sentiment.
I hope that in these pictures the melting pot of the so extreme that it will be not necessary to underline every time that they are Negro and they are white and they are Hispanic, etc., because there is no differences. All of them are created by the same God and created for the same purpose to add all good things around them and around, especially beginning by themselves and their families.
All right, you guys, another explosive day.
Okay, this is pretty much the last part of this unit, and then we'll get to the more classic things I show. This is the guy who, with that silly wig earlier, was doing a parody of Tucker Carlson. This is his parody of Candace Owens. He's basically playing himself as Candace Owens, commenting on and investigating Candace Owens.
Crazy announcements that are going to be coming out. We're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss that. As many of you know, Candace Owens has been making headlines lately, talking about Israel, talking about the Zionists. But what a lot of you don't know, and we looked into this, and I don't know if this is true, we don't have evidence that this is true, but I feel this is true. Turns out, if you look into her history, Candace Owens was originally born Candace Owenstein. That's interesting. I just find that interesting. It's very interesting to me. Where did she come from? Appearing on the scene all of a sudden, 2015, 2016? Just kind of popped out of nowhere? Is it possible that maybe we're all being fooled, you guys? And that she's actually a secret plant by the Mossad or some Jewish agency to rally all the Jews to unite in fighting her, someone who could actually bring the Jewish community together, and no one would have more of an interest in that than the Jews themselves, leading me to believe that Candace Owens might actually be a Jew. Some kind of psyop, some kind of operation. Just ask Bill Ackman. And again, I don't know if this is true. We don't have evidence if this is true, but I just feel this is true. So I'm gonna say it. Oh no! It's possible Candace Owens, aka Candace Owenstein, is actually a Jewish plant planted by Jews to rally the Jewish people around a common enemy, and that she's actually a Jew herself. Let's take a look at the history, and you'll notice some interesting coincidences? I don't know. We'll see. Let's take a look. What most people don't know is, before she was a conservative, she ran a website called Social Autopsy, which was designed to target people for cyberbullying. You guys, this was meant to cancel people who said the wrong things. Where do you think she learned that from? Probably the ADL, which means she was actually an ADL asset trained by the ADL. Guys, they think we're stupid. They think we're so stupid. She probably learned her same cancellation tactics from the very organization she condemns today, which means she's probably working for them. I don't have evidence for it, but I feel it's true. Her original name was Red Pill Black. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Jewish people, but when it comes to pills, Jewish people take a lot of medication. They do. They have stomach issues. I'm sorry if that's offensive. I'm sorry if that's a stereotype, but all the Jewish people I've known in my life have all taken medication for stomach issues or allergies or both. Moving on, she was then discovered by David Horowitz, and I don't have to tell you the origin of that name, but it is Jewish. Oh no! I said he's Jewish. David Horowitz, a Jewish man, gave Candace Owens, aka Candace Owenstein, some of her first recognition, her first platform. If you dig deeper, you discover that she then began working for Dennis Prager, Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro. What do they all have in common? They all happen to be Jewish. Oh no! They're all Jews, which means they would want to elevate one of their own, Candace Owenstein, who most likely is probably a Jew. You guys, it's so obvious. Something doesn't add up here. Are we actually to believe that she would just turn her back on all of these Jewish people that advanced her career? Why would anyone do that? Why would you do that? Why would you even do that? That just seems like a waste of time and supplies. No normal person would do that, especially someone who is always expressing gratitude and being grateful. So obviously she is grateful, and obviously she's still working for all of them, and she's simply a plant, a Mossad psyop to unite the Jewish people, okay? I don't know if this is true, but what? We can't talk about it? Oh no! You guys, they think we're stupid. They think we're crazy. If you dig a little deeper, you notice some interesting patterns, some interesting behavior that seems very Jewish, okay? She got engaged to her now husband, George Farmer, after 2 weeks of knowing him. They got engaged after 2 weeks. You guys, getting engaged after 2 weeks, there's nothing more Hasidic than that. That is exactly what Hasidic Jewish people do when they date. I don't know if you know this, but if you dig deeper, you find out that Hasidic couples date for a very short period of time, and they meet with someone called a shotkin. They meet with a shotkin, which is a Jewish matchmaker, and after about 2 weeks, they get engaged, which can only mean that it's very likely that Candace Owens is actually a Hasidic Jew who used a shotgun, and we will check the records and we will get back to you on that. If you look now as to what she is currently doing, interviewing and trying to vindicate a prominent Jewish figure in Hollywood. Hello, Harvey Weinstein, another Frankist. He's a Frankist. A prominent Jewish man she's secretly all of a sudden trying to defend, trying to vindicate. Why would she do that? Why would anyone do that? Why would she do that? Maybe because he supports Israel? He disclosed that he had to sell his movie rights to the people who control Hollywood, the Qataris and the Saudis. That's interesting. Why is that interesting? Why does that not surprise me? Because, as you all know, Semites are actually Arabs. So when we talk about anti-Semitism, and we talk about anti-Semitics and hating Semites, we're actually talking about Arabs, of which Harvey Weinstein clearly is one. And when Bill Ackman talks about anti-Semitism, he's not only talking about Jewish people, he's clearly also referring to the Qataris and the Saudis, who are Jewish Semite Arabs as well. Candace Owens, a.k.a. Candace Owenstein, is a secret Hasidic Jew Mossad psyop being run to unite the Jewish people for a common cause. It all makes sense. It makes too much sense, you guys. They think we're stupid. They think we're stupid. And I just want to add off by saying that I would chop off my left foot and my right foot and both my arms and flap around like a torso before I support Israel, because Israel is behaving like psychopaths, okay? You're psychopaths. You guys are psychopaths. You are crazy. And I would chop off all of my limbs and flap around on the ground like a human torso before I support you, okay? So my final words to Candace Owenstein: you were born a Jew and you will always be a Jew. We see you for who you are. All right, guys, tune in next week when we uncover that Bibi Netanyahu is a Muslim.
It is time for you to wake up. So we will start from the top here with a photo of Brigitte Macron. Real name, Jean-Michel Trogneux. That person that you are looking at on the right is not a woman. Macron has been tasked now with going out to the public and trying to dissuade them from believing that his wife, Brigitte Macron, was actually born a man.
French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron are reportedly suing Candace Owens for defamation over her claims that France's First Lady was born a male. In the lawsuit filed in a Delaware Superior Court on July 23rd, the pair claim Owens started a, quote, campaign of global humiliation and relentless bullying, according to NBC News. One example they reportedly used in the defamation suit is that Owens claimed the First Lady of France was born a male under the name Jean-Michel Tourneau, which NBC News reports is actually the name of her older brother. Quote, every time the Macrons leave their home, they do so knowing that countless people have heard and many believe these vile fabrications. It is invasive, dehumanizing, and deeply unjust, the complaint said as reported by NBC News. As a result, the President and First Lady of France are seeking an unspecified amount of compensatory and punitive damages per NBC News. Access Hollywood has reached out to Owens and the Macrons for comment. This is the latest defamation lawsuit from a global leader. President Donald Trump has filed several defamation suits over the past months.
You were born a man and you will die a man. That's the point I'm making. So give us a sample. I'll send my doctors to take your blood. Figure it out real quick, however you want to go about this. Hey, how about just giving us some pictures again of you growing up, raising your children? That would be fine. It is time for you to wake up. So we will start from the top here with a photo of Brigitte Macron. Real name, Jean-Michel Tourneau. That person that you are looking at on the right is not a woman. If you need any more evidence that Brigitte Macron is definitely a man, it is just what is happening right now. The idea that you would file this lawsuit is all of the proof that you need. Macron has been tasked now with going out to the public and trying to dissuade them from believing that his wife, Brigitte Macron, was actually born a man.
Well, you get the idea. Here we go.
Cesser le feu pour que l'ensemble du travail puisse.
So before we get to
feeling, you were born a man, and you will.
Before we get to feeling too bad for Macron, it's interesting.
Cesser le feu pour que l'ensemble.
It's interesting that he is perpetuating and perpetrating his own conspiracy theory that there's a people called Palestinians when there never has been and never are, and that there will be a Palestinian state, even though it doesn't exist. So that's his own conspiracy. He should get his friend Candace Owens together on that one.
L'ensemble du travail puisse se faire sur le plan sécuritaire et de la solution politique. La situation aujourd'hui.
I now begin to wonder, not seriously, whether he's going to declare a so-called Palestinian state as part of a conspiracy to get people's attention off the idea that his wife is his brother who groomed him as a boy who's a homosexual to marry his sister or whatever, who's born a man. So this gets people's minds off that.
After defeating the French during the Blitzkrieg in May 1940, the Nazis left large parts of France unoccupied. The southeastern part stayed under the control of the French Vichy regime, loyal to the Nazis and Italian fascists. The leader of the regime was French Marshal Pétain. Pétain came into power after the Nazi attack. He signed a treaty with the enemy, ordered to stop all resistance, and promised full cooperation. Next to obeying German orders, Vichy authorities started to prosecute Jews even before German orders. When the Allied invasion of France started in June 1944, the Vichy government got detained by the Nazis until the end of the war. After the war, Pétain was sentenced to death. However, Charles de Gaulle, the future leader of France, changed this to a lifetime sentence. The French collaboration and role in Jewish prosecution have long been taboo in France. In 2009, the highest court in France ruled that Vichy authorities were responsible for the death of at least 76,000 Jews.
That was France. This is Macron's France. Macron wants to recognize a so-called Palestinian state. No such thing as Palestinians. They're Martians. This is what goes on in France.
C'est une attaque, c'est un attentat, ni plus ni moins, contre une compagnie israélienne, contre le pays d'Israël. Un attentat sauvage qui est initié par ceux qui, par le Hamas. Israël condamne cette activité, cet acte de terrorisme de la façon la plus catégorique possible et soutient la compagnie d'El Al. Je suis sûr et certain que les autorités françaises feront tout ce qui est en leur pouvoir pour trouver les responsables de cela et les mener en justice.
And choosing to take action.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Tommy. Caroline Levitt addressed this a bit. President Trump posted earlier today that the Canadian recognition of a Palestinian state could affect a trade deal between the two countries. So it goes beyond just disagreement with the countries supporting a Palestinian state. It looks like it's actually turning into action. To what extent does the recognition of a Palestinian state by these several countries over the last few days, how is it going to impact the bilateral relations between the U.S. and those countries?
Well, the president's comments speak for themselves, though he also spoke about how, in terms of these recognition that it is helping Hamas, the secretary also spoke to this. It could be seen as a reward for Hamas in many ways. We actually saw on the day that Hamas rejected, as the secretary described today, rejected the ceasefire deal was the same day that France announced their recognition. So we are seeing, as the president described, that this could be seen as a reward for Hamas. And in many ways, as the secretary also said, this could hurt the process of peace. Because of these timelines they set there, Hamas has been the one blocking reaching a ceasefire. Hamas has been the one blocking peace. And now we have these timelines set that could actually lead to a reward for Hamas if they continue in this behavior. So that's what we're seeing here. The president and secretary have talked about this. I have nothing further to add to the president's comments in terms of a trade talks with Canada.
Tonight, Gazan journalists laying to rest several more of their own. Al Jazeera said Israeli strikes killed 5 of its staff in a tent Sunday in Gaza City. Israel claimed the strike, accusing Al Jazeera reporter Anas al-Sharif of leading a Hamas terror cell, a charge he and Al Jazeera have repeatedly denied. Palestinian officials in Gaza say at least 238 journalists have been killed by Israel. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to expand fighting in the Gaza Strip, saying last night he has no choice but to finish the job and defeat Hamas.
Our goal is not to occupy Gaza. Our goal is to free Gaza, free it from Hamas terrorists.
Netanyahu's strategy would bring Israeli forces into camps housing hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians. The Prime Minister speaking with President Trump on Sunday, who he thanked for his steadfast support. Despite 2 weeks of aid being airdropped and trucked into Gaza, many suffering worsening hunger, Gazan officials now say more than 100 children have died from malnutrition. Israeli hostages' families now fearful the fighting could endanger their loved ones.
The blood will be on your hands.
Last night, Netanyahu once again denied that there was hunger in the Gaza Strip and said reports of the deteriorating humanitarian situation there were exaggerated. Tom?
Matt Bradley from Israel tonight. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on
Ismail Sinwar was the head of Hamas's military wing before he was eliminated by the IDF in October of 2024. And if all of this is not enough, let's take a listen to what the Gazan population thinks of Sharif. Have a listen.
كما تشاهدون الناس عامة الناس تسأل عن أنس شريف مراسل قناة الجزيرة مراسل قناة الجزيرة عامة الشعب لا يريد قناة الجزيرة ها هو أحد المواطنين يقول أن الصحافة قناة الجزيرة لقد دخلت المستشفى لعدم تغطية الحدث.
Gazans are clearly not fooled. They know that Anas al-Sharif was not who the international community is praising him to be. He was not a voice for the Palestinians. He was a voice for Hamas. And meanwhile, the war in Gaza is continuing. The IDF are eliminating terror cells and dismantling Hamas infrastructure in both northern and southern Gaza. All this while the IDF prepares for the Gaza City takeover as instructed by the Security Cabinet earlier this week. IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir reiterated the war goals of dismantling Hamas and returning all of the hostages, ensuring that the IDF is ready to accomplish all of these goals in the best way possible. Zamir's announcement comes amid rising tensions between the IDF Chief of Staff and the Defense Minister Israel Katz. Katz slammed Zamir for advancing
29 people were arrested in London during a protest in support of Palestine Action, a group now banned under the United Kingdom's Terrorism Act 2000. This means that being a member of or showing support for the group is a criminal offense and could lead to up to 14 years in prison. Still, despite the prescription, hundreds attended the protest organized by the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign. The UK's Metropolitan Police took to social media to confirm the 29 arrests.
Officers are responding to a protest in support of Palestine Action. Arrests are being made.
It's crazy that our government is trying to enlist them as terrorists. There's people in prison now, some of them that I've met while I was in prison, who are facing terrorist charges in a long time inside, and they're peaceful protesters who are just trying to bring awareness and stop our government not just supporting a genocide, but also actually getting involved in a genocide.
The terror designation comes after Palestine Action activists broke into a Royal Air Force base, causing an estimated £7 million, or $9.5 million, worth of damage, while protesting against what the group says is Britain's complacency, or even complicity, towards Israel's alleged war crimes in Gaza. Members of the British Parliament voted overwhelmingly in favor of the resolution, and 3 judges blocked a bid to pause the designation.
The ayes to the right were 385, the noes to the left 26. So the ayes have it, the ayes have it.
We have lost today, this afternoon. That does not mean we have lost. There is still a chance to fight this.
There was a massive demonstration last week in London by the Jewish community. I think it was their second such demonstration since October 7th. There had been the original one that we actually saw a while ago, a year ago, and there's this one. It was a huge, huge demonstration in London. And one of the most fascinating moments of that demonstration, let me just take this down a second. One of the most fascinating moments of that demonstration, and America had a similar challenge, was whether to have among the speakers left-wing reform rabbis. In the United States, at the big 300,000 Jewish and other demonstration in Washington, D.C., that took place about a year and a half ago, it was decided not to have any left-wing rabbis or any left-wing reform anything on the stage. And it was decided if they don't like it, they don't have to come to the demonstration. So instead of 300,000, we'll have 299,500. But we're not putting them on the stage. The British are more congenial, and the people who ran the program was a wonderful mass Jewish demonstration, filled London's main highway or roadway. And at one point, they had two rabbis, reform rabbis, make a speech, and it's going to be one of the highlights of the demonstration. Basically, the crowd booed the two rabbis off the stage. It's very nice, very nice. That's Reform Judaism. Okay, let's keep it rolling with this. Good, there we go.
Home! Bring them home! We will never sleep in peace. Thank you very much. I'm Israel Chai.
אם לא תשכח תמיד להיות מאוחדים. לסיום. עם ישראל חי. להיות בירידות ובשעות הכי קשות.
This is the point where the reform rabbis were speaking. And you'll notice this guy is not a Hasidic or Haredi or even wearing a kippah. But when the reform rabbis start talking about Palestinian rights, by the way, there's no such thing as Palestine or Palestinian. At this demonstration,
shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Of 10 Downing Street, that the untold suffering in Gaza is the 49. Known as Hamas. Such, she went on to say, such a
when Hamas forced him and his brother Eitan to run. Bring them home! Bring them home! Bring them home! Bring them home! Let them go! 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 Let them go!
by the way, as opposed to the two slogans, bring them home or let them go, bring them home, which became the official slogan of the last 2 years, one of the stupidest, most damaging, and most counterproductive slogans in the history of political protest by any people for anything. Bring them home was coined and created by the Israeli left, the opposition attempting to take down the Netanyahu government. Because if you think about the words, bring them home, who is that directed to? Hamas? To bring them home? That's not directed to Hamas. That's not, who's it directed to? Qatar? Saudi Arabia? Is it directed to Joe Biden and America's government? It's directed at Netanyahu. It's directed at the Israeli government. And that became the mindless slogan of the movement. Even when 300,000 gathered, no one stopped to think about it. The proper slogan, as with Soviet Jewry, let my people go. Namely, Hamas, you are the bastards holding our hostages, let them go. And it's one of the shames that this self-hate and the hate for Netanyahu is so strong among half that population that those idiots created that slogan, which took the steam out of all the protests of the last 2 years. Bring them home. They're demanding it of Netanyahu. Okay, fine. But the ones that primarily should be protested against are Hamas.
Mate, move out of the way!
I'm not getting there, I'm not going.
No, get out of the way!
I'm not going there!
Get out of the way!
I'm not going there! Get out! Get back!
They threatened to recognize the state of Palestine if there was no ceasefire with Hamas, but that's a perverse incentive because Hamas, why would Hamas want to have a ceasefire if it can get by default a recognition of a Palestinian state, which it could credibly claim credit for. So it completely scuppered the negotiations.
Our goal is not to occupy Gaza. Our goal is to free Gaza, free it from Hamas terrorists. The war can end tomorrow if Gaza, or rather if Hamas lays down its arms and releases all the remaining hostages.
I'm honored to introduce Rabbi Charlie Baginski and Rabbi Josh Levy, co-leaders of the Unified Progressive Judaism Movement.
On October the 7th, 2023, Hamas unleashed horror on Israel and on all the Jews in the world. They murdered, burned and kidnapped, shattering lives and shattering peace. The responsibility for this war and for the agony it has brought lies with them. And still today they hold 50 hostages, living and dead. These are not statistics. They are mothers and fathers, children and grandparents. They have names, faces, birthdays missed, embraces.
So far, so good, right? That's how the reforms start. They sound like they're really Jewish.
Delayed, and tragically funerals delayed too. They must come home. There is no higher priority for us. And this is why we stand here as one united Jewish community today. With all of our difference that we hold between us, we demand together that the hostages are brought home. This is an issue that belongs to all of us, and we stand in solidarity against Hamas and all who wish to destroy Jews and the Jewish state.
Last night, tens of thousands of Israeli Jews gathered on the streets to protest for the release of the hostages. They protested against Hamas. They protested against policies and rhetoric that doesn't allow the hostages to come home. And we must be brave and honest enough to do so. Rhetoric like this does lasting damage to Israel. With those protesting in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, and across Israel, we call for an end to this war through a deal that brings the hostages home and the permanent restoration of humanitarian aid to Gaza.
Here we go.
Let us.
You notice how it's starting to shift. Their speech and the audience reaction starting to shift. Anyone who's on the know knows that she's endorsing demonstrations in Israel by the Israeli left wing against the Israeli government. Everybody can read between the lines, and it's initially written in a way that if you don't know this stuff, they sound like they're defending and supporting everything everyone else is, but they're transitioning. And here comes the next.
Be clear about Palestinian statehood. The Palestinian people, like us, have the right to self-determination. But how it is done matters too. We reject a methodology that tries to force this future through violence, terror, and the suffering of civilians. Statehood cannot be built on the blood of innocence, and peace will never grow from the soil of pain and...
Notice the guy in the back in the yellow, right behind her. He's getting there to pull them off the stage.
hatred.
We say this because we affirm our common humanity. We mourn for those who were murdered on October the 7th, for the soldiers who have fallen, for innocent civilians whose lives have been lost. Every life.
That's Reform Judaism, progressive Judaism. In England, they won't put up with it.
You should be ashamed of yourself! You should be ashamed!
It is my honor to invite Lord Pollack, President of the Conservative Friends of Israel, to speak.
And so it goes.
New at 4, a Jewish family in Virginia is accusing a private school of expelling their children after they were alleged anti-Semitic bullying involved.
And now they're filing a complaint with the Virginia Attorney General. Now, Fox 5 chief legal correspondent Katie Barlow has the story tonight. Katie, this is a very interesting case. Here you have alleged anti-bullying.
So Brian Vasquez and Ashok Roy were shocked when they received a letter last March notifying them that their 3 children, now one 8-year-old boy and 2 12-year-old daughters, would not be allowed to return to the Naismith School for Gifted in Herndon, Virginia. The letter came just 2 days after the parents had a meeting with the school's director, Kenneth Naismith, begging him to intervene on behalf of their 6th grade daughter who was getting bullied for being Jewish.
They picked up their children one afternoon in March and had to tell their children they weren't able to go back to school anymore, that they were being kicked out of school. And This was two 11-year-old girls and an 8-year-old boy. And they didn't understand why they were being kicked out. They wanted to know what they had done wrong or what their parents had done wrong. So their parents, and it is a phenomenal family. They decided it was important to take a stand for their community and for their children.
The Brandeis Center has filed a civil rights complaint with Virginia's Office of the Attorney General on behalf of the family against the school that was once ranked top 10 in the world by Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. The parents claim the school and its leadership violated Virginia's Human Rights Act for discrimination and retaliation for complaining about their daughter experiencing anti-Semitic harassment. The parents say students pointed to her saying Jews were, quote, baby killers, and that, quote, they deserve to die because of what happened in Gaza. Their daughter was afraid to come to them, they said. Her parents only learned about the harassment, according to the complaint, when one of the girl's classmates was worried about her safety and asked his mom to call her mom. Now, the Office of Attorney General can investigate the matter. They may even issue a right to sue letter that would empower the family to move forward with a lawsuit against the school. The school has not responded to Fox 5's repeated requests for comment.
אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. 20 שנה.
A non-observant Israeli spokesman put on a kippah to recite the Shehachianu Bracha because this week, Minister Bezalel Smotrich, one of the two more right-wing ministers, the other one is Itamar Ben-Gvir. There's actually a whole bunch of, from their two parties, Knesset members, but they are ministers. And Smotrich is the Minister of Finance. And he announced this week that he's authorizing something like, and I pardon me if I've got the wrong, oh, there's the number. He's authorizing the construction of 3,401 living units in an area near Ma'ale Adumim, which is a suburb of Yerushalayim. It's part of Yerushalayim, Greater Jerusalem, suburb. Sort of think of Long Island compared to New York City. It's part of New York, but it's a suburb, or the San Fernando Valley compared to LA. He's going to approve, he has approved 3,400. They've never done this before. And when those houses are up, not only will they provide housing, let's see, if an average Israeli family has 4 kids, let's say, or 3, and his mother and father, so it's going to bring 15 to 20,000 Jews more into Ma'ale Adumim. But what it also will do is it will create a landmass of housing that will split the Judea Samaria, so-called West Bank, in such a way that further makes it impossible for there ever to be a Palestinian state and a two-state solution. And this has now generated, over the last 3-4 days, world condemnation. Because this is I maintain that even if they don't build anymore, that it is impossible for a so-called Palestinian state to be constructed, erected, established, for many reasons I've discussed over the many, many months. But this really is like a nail in the coffin. If they build 3,400, like in the heart of the middle of what was supposed to be a Palestine state in the minds of Macron and Keir Starmer and David Lammy. So that's what this is. That's why
20 שנה של עיכובים, קיפאון והבטחות.
20 years of, after 20 years of delays and building freezes and promises,
הובילו לרגע היסטורי ומשמעותי,
an historic and substantial moment in history has finally arrived in the battle for Jewish settlement in Judea, Samaria.
במאבק ההתיישבותי.
תוכנית E1 מבשרת אדומים יוצאת לדרך.
This is Minister Smotrich, and he's announcing that finally the process of building in that region, which is known as region E1, no time to get into why it's called E1 right now, it's now begun. It's now formally, legally approved.
בהמשך לפרסום הראשון במהדורת 14, השר בצלאל סמוטריץ' עם ראש מועצת יש"ע וראש העיר מעלה אדומים יכריזו היום על תוכנית E1 במעלה אדומים.
Today they announced finally formally this plan to build in region E1.
3,401 יחידות דיור שישנו את מפת
3,401 dwelling units that will forever change the map of settlement in Judea, Samaria.
התיישבות ביהודה ושומרון, ויהפכו את החיבור בין ירושלים למעלה אדומים.
It will completely upend the connection between, on the one hand, it will reverse the reality and will create a direct corridor between Jerusalem and Ma'ale Adumim as a fact on the ground.
אדומים לעובדה בשטח.
מי שמנסה היום בעולם
As this Smotrich saying, anyone in the world today who is trying to recognize a Palestine state
להכיר במדינה פלסטינית יקבל מאיתנו
now shall receive from us our response.
תשובה בשטח. הם ידברו על החלום.
They can speak about their dream, their lie, their fake dream, their lying dream of a Palestine.
השקרי הפלסטיני. אנחנו נמשיך לבנות.
And we will continue building reality in Judea, Samaria.
מציאות יהודית מגשימה.
הפרויקט B1 נחשב במשך שנים כמהלך.
It used to be in the days of Sharon, when all this mess happened and Tzipi Livni, in the years 20 years ago when Sharon gave up Gaza and he made other deals and he created Project E1, which is going to be a shared internationalized region.
נפיץ בזירה הבינלאומית. התוכנית הוצגה לראשונה כבר ב-1990 בידי שר הבינוי.
Now, back in 1990, they already had a plan of maybe building some housing at the time that Sharon was there.
והשיכון דאז, אריאל שרון, ומאז נתקלה בהתנגדות חריפה של מדינה.
And then when Israel announced it was going to build in the international area of E1, there was such an international outcry that Israel backed down after being attacked by all the governments of Europe and even the American government.
מדינות אירופה וממשלים אמריקאים. מדובר בשטח אסטרטגי.
We're talking about a strategic area. This particular area will absolutely break up the continuity between Ramallah and Bethlehem in the part of Judea that the Arabs currently are holding in their so-called, in their Martian authority. So it will break up their own region, dividing it. It would be like living in New York, let's say Manhattan, and from East 14th Street to East 60th Street, another country owns everything and has housing between East 14th and East 60th from 1st Avenue to 11th Avenue, dividing the country, dividing Manhattan in half by another country. That's what this will do.
יאבו תמנע רצף טריטוריאלי ערבי בין רמאללה לבית לחם ותהיה מסמר נוסף בארון לרעיון שתי המדינות.
And this will be yet another nail in the coffin, the idea of two states.
שיהפוך לבלתי אפשרי כמעט.
It will make it just about impossible.
מבחינת תומכיו, זהו שלב מרכזי בדרך להחלת ריבונות ישראלית.
And it unspoken today is that not only is it destroying the Palestine state dream, but it's another step towards Israel formally extending annexation sovereignty, declaring sovereignty over all of Judea, Samaria.
על יהודה ושומרון.
אנחנו חייבים עורקי תחבורה טובים ונגישים לירושלים ולמרכז. אנחנו עובדים עכשיו על כביש 437, עובדים עכשיו על כביש מרקם החיים.
We're doing all this different stuff. This particular guy is the mayor of the city of Ma'ale Adumim. And he's saying we're all doing all this stuff that's there's no such word, permanentizing our region as Jewish with no chance for an Arab sovereignty. We're building roads, highways, we're just doing all this infrastructure work that is, we're here to stay. We're not a settlement, we're a city of tens of thousands of people. We're here to stay.
זה כבר בדרך, ואנחנו עכשיו נדרוש במסגרת גם הסכם הגג מראש הממשלה וממשלת ישראל רכבת או קלה או כבדה שתגיע למעלה אדומים כדי ש...
We're asking for the Israeli train system to have a stop in Ma'ale Adumim, to be extended to us, so that we have further contact and that we just become part of, that people don't think of us as Long Island compared to New York, but as New York. You didn't say it that way, but basically we're not even thought of as a suburb, but we're part of the extended city.
תהיה פה נגישות תחבורתית. זה המשימה הבאה.
מחזקים את ירושלים בירת ישראל, מונעים ממדינה פלסטינית שבירתה ירושלים שתסכן את עתיד מדינת ישראל.
We are making permanent the extended Jerusalem. We are making impossible any kind of Palestinian state from ever happening. And with the help of God in the future, there will be more housing, more cities in Judea.
בעזרת השם העתיד, עוד שכונות, עוד ערים, והחלת ריבונות דה פקטו בכל יהודה ושומרון.
And finally, sovereignty in Judea, Samaria. So it turns out Shalom Achshav is still around after all. That was the group whose spokesman was talking to Lubavitcher Rebbe. So they posted, I guess, on internet, on probably on Twitter or whatever, B'niyah be'iwan katlanit la'atida shel Yisrael. Building in the E1 region is a death sentence for Israel. These are the leftists. Le'efsharut sheyeh kan atid shel shalom b'msorat pitron shtei hamdinot. It's a death sentence for Israel because it's a death sentence for the two-state solution. Anachnu nitzivim al pi tehom. We are standing on the brink of disaster. V'hamemshala movila otanu b'ful gaz kadima, and we're being driven into like a gas explosion or a gas pool, whatever, I don't know.
לתמיכה במהלכים, בארגוני השמאל ובזירה הבינלאומית מותחים ביקורת חריפה.
Whenever Shalom Achshav is against something, you know it's good.
אבל סמוטריץ' לא עוצר, והוא מפנה אצבע מאשימה לראש הממשלה.
But Smotrich was not finished on that day last week. He then pointed a finger at Netanyahu, that Netanyahu is a little bit too easygoing and hasn't moved forward on sovereignty, and he's threatening Netanyahu that we are going to go sovereign in Judea, Samaria, and we're going to take down the government.
שלדבריו, מעכב את קידום הריבונות, וקורא לו לא להתמהמה.
And he calls on Netanyahu not to delay. There's Smotrich saying there's only one thing that is standing between us and sovereignty over Judea, Samaria. The only thing holding up sovereignty today is the delayed decision of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Calling on him right here, talking into your microphone, please do this already. It's right, it's just.
זה נכון, זה צודק, היסטורית, תנכית.
It's historic, it's consistent with the Bible, it's nationalistic, it's security, it's morality, it's democracy.
לאומית, ביטחונית, מוסרית, דמוקרטית, זאת ההחלטה הנכונה.
That is the right decision to make, to announce that Israel is annexing Judea, Samaria. And the reporter says this is against the background of international condemnation.
הביקורת הבינלאומית והתמהמהות הממשלה, כדאי לחזור לדבריו של בן גוריון משנת 1955.
The reporter says, against this background, it's good to remember the words of Prime Minister Ben Gurion in 1955, 68 years ago.
כל הכבוד למוסדות אום וחברותיה.
With all due respect to the institutions of the United Nations and all its agencies, our future is not going to be based on what the non-Jews tell us.
עתידנו אינו תלוי במה יאמרו הגויים, אלא
The only thing that will matter for our destiny is what Jews do.
במה יעשו היהודים.